The whistle blew, and within about 4 seconds, the World Cup final stopped being a football match. One man had his hand around an opponent's throat. Another opponent was already on the grass. A defender ran past the newly crowned world champions and drove a blow into the ribs of the best midfielder on the planet. An assistant coach came within inches of a Spanish forward's face. Coaching staff were pulling their own players back by the shirt. Confetti was still falling, and in the middle of it, one man in a blue and white shirt walked calmly from opponent to opponent, shaking every hand. Apparently, the only person on his own team who had accepted the game was finished. Minutes earlier, they had been defending world champions. Now, they were a disciplinary file sitting on a desk in Zurich. In this video, we go through every incident from that afternoon in New Jersey. The banner in Atlanta that started it. The red card that was shown and then quietly erased from the official record. The 4 separate confrontations that broke out in about 30 seconds. And by the end, you will understand why the most dangerous thing for Argentina right now is not the size of the punishment. It is the timing of it. Because there is a scenario where this drags on long enough to reach into qualifying for the next World Cup. But first, go back 4 days. To a stadium in Atlanta. And to a piece of cloth handed over a barrier by a supporter. Because the trouble did not start at the final. It started in the semi-final. Argentina had just beaten England 2-1. England had led. Argentina struck twice late through Enzo Fernandez and Lautaro Martinez, and Thomas Tuchel's side were on their way home. By any measure, it was one of the great nights in modern Argentine football. And then the celebrations began. Giovanni Lo Celso took a banner from supporters in the stand. He unfurled it on the pitch alongside teammates including Lisandro Martinez, Cristian Romero, and Nicolas Otamendi. The message on it read, in Spanish, that the Malvinas are Argentine. In English, that the Falkland Islands belong to Argentina. For anyone who does not know the history, this is not a small thing. Those islands are a British overseas territory in the South Atlantic. In 1982, Argentina's then military government ordered an invasion of them. Britain sent a task force. The war lasted around 10 weeks. 655 Argentine servicemen and 255 British servicemen died, along with 3 islanders. It remains one of the most sensitive subjects between the two countries to this day. So when a group of professional footballers held that banner up on live television in front of a global audience, in a stadium in the United States, immediately after knocking England out of a World Cup, the reaction was instant. The British government responded within 24 hours. A spokesperson for the Prime Minister said the World Cup might not be British, but the Falkland Islands definitely were. Politician Ed Davey called on FIFA to act immediately, and FIFA confirmed its independent disciplinary committee was assessing the match reports before deciding on next steps. That was the polite version. In practice, a case had been opened. The rules here are not ambiguous. FIFA's disciplinary code prohibits the use of gestures, words, objects, or any other means to transmit a message that is not appropriate for a sports event, and it specifically names messages of a political, ideological, religious, or offensive nature. There is no exception for celebration, for national sentiment, or for a banner that came from the crowd rather than the dressing room. And here's the part that made it worse. Argentina had already been punished for the exact same message before. In June 2014, 5 days before the World Cup in Brazil began, the Argentina squad displayed a banner carrying that same slogan before a friendly against Slovenia in La Plata. FIFA opened an inquiry into what it called an apparent breach of regulations on the prevention of provocative and aggressive actions, then fined and formally reprimanded the Argentine Football Association, with the figure reported at 30,000 Swiss francs. 12 years later, same slogan, same governing body, same rulebook, which is why the phrase repeated offense started appearing in coverage almost immediately. FIFA fines for political messaging have historically landed between around $5,000 and $20,000. But a second offense at a World Cup in front of the largest audience the sport has is not the same case as a friendly. The politics got stranger. Argentina's president Javier Milei called the celebration perfectly valid, said the message reflected a sentiment shared by all Argentines, and openly predicted FIFA would fine the team anyway. Then the White House publicly defended the players' right to make the statement on free speech grounds, putting the United States at odds with the United Kingdom over a football celebration at a tournament the Americans were hosting. So Argentina went into a World Cup final with an open disciplinary case, a diplomatic argument running in the background, and a squad told by their own head of state that they had done nothing wrong. Reports out of Spain suggested FIFA had already settled one question, which was that nothing would be ruled on before the tournament ended. Nobody would be suspended for the final. Argentine outlet Clarin reported that suspensions looked less likely than fines, and that sporting bans are generally reserved for cases considered particularly serious or repeated. So the players walked out at MetLife Stadium on the 19th of July with the file already open, and within 2 hours, they would give FIFA a second, much heavier one. Because what happened in that final was not a controversy. It was a collapse of order in front of the largest television audience on Earth. Let's talk about the match itself first, because the match explains the temperature. Spain were better, not marginally better, comprehensively, embarrassingly better. Luis de la Fuente's side controlled the game from the opening minutes and never let go of it, finishing with around 66% of the ball and close to 600 completed passes. Argentina managed under 300. And then there is the statistic that will follow this Argentina team around for the rest of their lives. Across the entire 90 minutes of a World Cup final, Argentina did not register a single shot, not one on target, not one off target. 0 attempts and 2 touches inside the Spanish penalty area. They are the first team in the history of the competition to go through 90 minutes of a final without attempting a shot. The only reason the game was still level was Emiliano Martinez. He denied Pau Cubarsí. He denied Pedri. He denied Nico Williams. He denied Ferran Torres from close range after Lamine Yamal had cut the ball back. And right at the end of a normal time, he threw himself across his goal to keep out a Yamal free kick heading for the corner. 11 saves by the end of the night, which is a record for a World Cup final. Spain thought they had broken through when Williams found the net, but the goal was ruled out for a foul by Mikel Merino on Otamendi in the build-up. Then came the moment the game turned. Deep into stoppage time at the end of normal time, Enzo Fernandez, already booked, went through the legs of Cubarsí. Second yellow. The referee, Slavko Vincic of Slovenia, sent him off. It went to review. No reprieve. Extra time with 10 men. Scaloni's plan from there was obvious to everyone watching. Get to penalties and let Martinez do the rest. They reached the second half of extra time. And then, 39 seconds after the restart, Pedro Porro crossed, Nico Williams knotted it down at the far post, and Ferran Torres hit it first time into the roof of the net. Spain were world champions for the second time, 16 years after the first, and Argentina, who had scored 19 goals on the way to the final, had lost one without having a shot. Now hold that in your head. The exhaustion, the 10 men, and the fact that Spain's players had spent the entire week publicly complaining about the way Argentina were being allowed to play. That last part is where the whole thing detonated. Before the final, Spain defender Aymeric Laporte had given an interview in which he said he had no problem with physical play as long as it was part of football, but that in recent matches there had been things that surprised him, situations that had gone unpunished, particularly involving Argentina, who he described as a team that likes to leave little messages with its challenges. To Spain, that was a fair observation about officiating. To Argentina, that was a rival lobbying the referee in public before a World Cup final. And when the whistle went, Nicolas Otamendi went looking for someone to say that to. He found Rodri. His former Manchester City teammate just named the outstanding player of the tournament, who had walked over to shake his hand. Otamendi did not shake it. He told Rodri he needed to talk less, accused him of spending the entire week complaining, and named Laporte directly, saying the two of them had been crying about the referees all week and that was not how it should be done. Rodri looked genuinely confused and asked what he meant. Otamendi asked whether he had not seen what Laporte said that week. Rodri walked away. That was the calmest confrontation on the pitch, because 10 yards away, it had already gone much further than words. Here is what the footage shows, and the details matter. because they are exactly what the FIFA prosecutor is working from. Leandro Paredes, a substitute already booked for a heavy challenge shortly after coming on, ran into a group of players and put his hand to the throat of Spain defender Eric Garcia. The force of it put Garcia on the ground. Paredes then went towards Gavi, who had a moment earlier been thrown down by Thiago Almada. Almada pulled Paredes away. At the same time, Argentina fullback Nahuel Molina struck Rodri in the body as the Spain captain ran past to join his own celebrations. And on the touchline, assistant coach Roberto Ayala became involved in an altercation with Dani Olmo, coming close to striking the Spain forward in the face. Players and staff from both squads were pulled in. Lionel Scaloni and several of his coaching staff physically dragged their own people out of the middle of it. Vinicius moved in to restore order. And Lionel Messi, in what may prove his final act at a World Cup, walked away from all of it and shook the hand of every Spanish player he could find. Afterwards, the Argentine squad spoke to nobody. They bypassed the mixed zone entirely and left through a side exit straight onto the team bus. But there was one more twist that night, and it is the most important detail in this entire story. Because immediately after the game, it was widely reported that Paredes had been shown a straight red card by Vinicius for the incident with Garcia. Multiple outlets carried it. Photographs of the aftermath circulated everywhere. As far as the watching world was concerned, an Argentina player had been sent off after the final whistle of a World Cup final. Then the official match report came out. There was no red card on it. FIFA later confirmed to the BBC that Paredes had not in fact been shown a red card, that no disciplinary action had been taken by the referee at the time, and the sanction was removed from FIFA's official records entirely. At first glance, that reads like Paredes got away with it. A lot of people took it that way. It is close to the opposite. Here is why. If a player is sent off on the field of play, the punishment is largely automatic and largely fixed. Standard framework, small number of games, processed and forgotten. If there is no card, the incident does not disappear. It moves upstairs. It becomes a retrospective disciplinary matter, handled by people with a far wider range of options and no obligation to stay near the minimum. And 2 days after the final, FIFA confirmed exactly that had happened. The statement said that following an assessment of the relevant match reports for the World Cup final between Spain and Argentina, and in line with Article 36 of the FIFA Disciplinary Code, the disciplinary committee had appointed a disciplinary and ethics prosecutor to investigate potential breaches of the code with regard to the post-match incidents. Further details, it said, would be communicated once the prosecutor's report was complete. Read that carefully because there is a lot buried in it. Article 36 is the provision, allowing the Secretariat to appoint a prosecutor to carry out the inquiries necessary into alleged breaches. This is not a referee filing a card. This is FIFA formally assigning an investigator to build a case. Appointing a disciplinary and ethics prosecutor, rather than simply logging a violent conduct charge, signals that FIFA is looking at something broader than one player's hands on one opponent. It opens the door to charges around misconduct of players and officials, offensive behavior and violations of the principles of fair play, and order and security at matches. Those are the articles Argentina have been charged under before. And no time frame was given. None at all. So what can actually be handed down? Article 14 of the FIFA Disciplinary Code sets out the sanctions for match-related offenses. Violent conduct carries a minimum suspension of 3 matches. Assault, which the code defines to include elbowing, punching, kicking, biting, spitting at or hitting an opponent or any person other than a match official, also carries a minimum of 3. Minimum, not maximum. There is no ceiling written into that number, and FIFA has gone well beyond it when it wanted to. One piece of mechanics attached to that works in Argentina's favor. Bans of this kind are served in matches involving the team the player was representing at the time. That means Argentina national team fixtures, not club football. Nobody is missing Premier League or La Liga games over this. The association can also be fined as an entity, entirely separately from anything imposed on individuals. So who is actually in the frame? Start with the ones whose involvement is on video and beyond dispute. Leandro Paredes is the central figure. The hand to Eric Garcia's throat, the incident with Gavi, the fact he was already booked, and the fact no on-field punishment was applied all point the same way. If FIFA charges anyone, it charges him. Nahuel Molina is next. Striking an opponent in the body while that opponent celebrates a World Cup win is not a gray area under the code. Thiago Almada is in the file for throwing Gavi to the ground, although the footage also shows him pulling Paredes away seconds later, which is the kind of detail defense submissions are built on. Roberto Ayala is easy to overlook and potentially the most exposed of all, because he is coaching staff, not a player. FIFA has historically taken a harder line on staff than on players in the heat of a match, on the basis that staff are supposed to be the ones calming things down. Nicolas Otamendi is in a different category. What he did was verbal, and verbal exchanges almost never produce suspensions on their own. But he is also one of the players photographed with the banner in Atlanta, which brings him into the other case. Then there is the semi-final group. Lisandro Martinez, Cristian Romero, and Giovanni Lo Celso have all been named as players who could face individual penalties over the political message, on top of whatever the association is fined. And Enzo Fernandez is in the simplest position of all. Sent off in the final for a second bookable offense which carries an automatic suspension entirely separate from anything the prosecutor decides. Added up, and Argentina face punishment on 3 fronts at once: a fine for the banner, individual sanctions for the players who displayed it, and a full investigation into the brawl. Now here is where it gets genuinely dangerous for them. And it has nothing to do with the severity. It is the calendar. The next international window has been extended and consolidated, merging what used to be the September and October breaks into a single block running from the 21st of September to the 6th of October. Teams will play 4 matches in that period. For Argentina, those 4 matches are almost certainly friendlies. South American qualifying for the next World Cup has not started, and there is no competitive fixture on their schedule in that window. Which means that if FIFA rules quickly, a 3-match ban costs them nothing of consequence. 3 friendlies. A few players stay home. The story dies. But there is no guarantee the prosecutor reaches a verdict in time. FIFA gave no time frame, and investigations of this type have historically run for weeks and sometimes months. If sanctions land after that window closes, they do not evaporate. They sit there waiting for the next matches Argentina play, and the next competitive matches Argentina play are qualifiers. For the 2028 Copa America, and then for the 2030 World Cup. That is the scenario Argentina cannot afford. Not because 3 games of qualifying would end a campaign, but because it would mean opening a new cycle, with a squad already in transition, without senior players, in matches that actually count. So how bad could it get? For that, look at what FIFA and its regional equivalents have actually done when they were annoyed. The most comforting precedent for Argentina is their own history. After the 2022 World Cup, a case was opened over their conduct in the aftermath of the final, covering offensive behavior, violations of the principles of fair play, and misconduct of players and officials. The outcome was money, a figure reported at over $24,000. No bans. Case closed. The same happened after the ill-tempered quarterfinal against the Netherlands at that tournament. Proceedings opened. Fines paid. Nobody suspended. But the precedent that should actually worry Argentina is not one of theirs at all. It is Uruguay. After the 2024 Copa America semi-final against Colombia in Charlotte, several Uruguay players went into the stands and were involved in violent conduct with opposing supporters. Their federation argued self-defense. It did not work. Darwin Núñez was suspended for 5 matches. Rodrigo Bentancur got 4. Jose Maria Giménez, Matthias Oliveira, and Ronald Araujo received 3 each. Uruguay appealed to the Court of Arbitration for Sport, and CAS upheld every one of those bans in full. That is the modern benchmark for what happens when players from a South American national team put hands on people after a big game. Outside the disciplinary process, something else has been happening that carries enormous numbers and almost no legal weight. Petitions. One demanding the final be replayed over allegedly corrupt officiating gathered over 82,000 signatures in a day. Another, calling for Argentina to be expelled from the World Cup permanently, has reportedly attracted a figure in the tens of millions. None of it matters. FIFA does not replay finals because of online petitions. What those numbers do tell you is the scale of the reputational damage, and that is the part Argentina cannot appeal, because the verdict from within the game was close to unanimous. Former England goalkeeper Joe Hart said one man on the pitch had shown class, and that was Messi, who shook hands with every Spanish player. The rest of it, he said, was disgusting behavior, and Argentina could have no complaints about the result. Wayne Rooney said it did not surprise him, that we had seen this from Argentina before, and that if you lose a game of football, you should be gracious and leave. He called it sad and really poor. Spain's own head coach Luis de la Fuente described the brawl as inadmissible. Not everyone piled on. Gavi, who was thrown to the ground and then confronted, publicly argued that Paredes should not be suspended. He said he understood it was not a good image for children, but that there is a side to football that is more physical and more aggressive, and that the logical thing would have been to send Paredes off during the match and leave it there. In the end, he said, it is all football, and it has to be that way. That is a striking thing for the victim of an incident to say while the prosecutor is still gathering evidence, and it will almost certainly appear in the defense. From the Argentine side, the responses split two ways. Roberto Ayala apologized, more or less. He said his intention when the match ended had been to step in and separate everyone, but emotions were running high and things escalated. He said it was not an excuse, that he should not have reacted that way, and that it had been a knee-jerk reaction to something said to him. He added that Spain were the better team and deserved to win. Lionel Scaloni took the high road. He refused to blame the officiating, said plainly that Spain had been better, and framed the rest around dignity, saying Argentina are gracious in victory and must be gracious in defeat, that they knew how to lose and accepted the result, but that accepting it did not mean forgetting everything they had done to get there. And Leandro Paredes, the man at the center of the investigation, posted a message thanking Argentina, saying he wrote with a heavy heart at not bringing the country the joy it deserved, but with a chest full of pride at having given everything, and calling it an honor to be part of what he described as the best Argentine national team in history. There was no apology in it, not a word about Eric Garcia, not a word about the brawl, which tells you something about how this is being processed inside that dressing room, and it is not remorse. So where does it leave Argentina? The immediate football consequences are smaller than the headlines suggest. Fines are near certain. Some suspensions are likely, particularly for Paredes and Molina, and those will probably be served in friendlies. Argentina will move on. The longer consequences are harder to shrug off. This is a squad at the end of a cycle. Messi's international future is uncertain in a way it has not been before. And that afternoon in New Jersey may well have been the last World Cup match he ever plays. Emiliano Martinez, after producing that goalkeeping performance on the losing side, left his own international future openly unresolved. An entire generation is walking towards the exit at the same time, and the ones arriving behind them inherit a shirt that now comes with a reputation attached. Because that is what actually changed on the 19th of July. Not the trophy, the story. For 4 years, this Argentina team framed their edge and their needling as the thing that made them champions. The swagger, the mentality, the bit that separated them. Then they lost a World Cup final without a shot, and the swagger looked like something else. It looked like a team that could not handle it. And FIFA now has 2 files open, a prosecutor appointed, no deadline to work to, and a rule book that starts at 3 matches and has no printed ceiling. The final was decided in 106 minutes. The consequences are going to take a lot longer than that. If you enjoyed this breakdown, hit the like button and subscribe for more football documentaries. Until next time.